by her father, Bryan.
Ivy was born in a crossfire hurricane, and she howled at the world in the driving rain. She's tough. She's got guts. She's warmed her bloody and frostbitten hands at Lexington and Concord. She rode with Sherman through the South, dodged bullets at Normandy, and she never, ever, never left a man behind. You know, Lee Marvin, he taught her how to cuss. And Paul Newman taught her how to take a punch and eat hard-boiled eggs. And Woody Allen taught her how to shoot a moose. Mr. Houston taught her that art is not everything. Zoe Glass taught her how to smoke cigars. And you know, James P. Murphy, he taught her that sometimes to do the right thing, you gotta do the wrong thing. And Harry Potter, well, he never taught her anything. And you know what? She's never really had, you know, I can tell you some more stories about it. I can tell you about the day that she climbed the top of a redwood tree and rescued and then reunited a small, scared, shivering kitten with its teary-eyed owner. Or I can tell you about the time that she donated one of her beautiful eyes so that another less fortunate child could see. I wish you guys didn't know that she had a glass eye. No, I won't tell you about those things, but I will tell you that whenever we were out with our family and her grandparents, and her struggling frail grandfather would fall behind the rest of the party, that Ivy would notice, and casually, so he wouldn't feel self-conscious, wait for him to catch up. She does lots of good things like that without advertising or announcing them. She just does it because she knows they're the right thing to do. Oh yeah, and she did throw up once at the Waffle House. Strawberries and waffles all over the table. You know, she's never really had to dodge a bullet, but I think she would for what she believes. And she's smart and brave and beautiful. And that's it. I love her.
Even though the entire button-up town was standing by with their noses in the air. He was aware enough something enough, I didn't know quite what then, to know who she was and who he was and what to do about it. And I saw Mr. Smith goes to Washington, and Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Smith, becomes a senator and literally uses his voice until it gives out. Even though the entire Senate thinks he's a liar and a crook, he filibusters against greed and graft and lies and for lost causes, Mr. Payne, trying to get a boys' camp built and protect the sanctity of the American government system in which he has so much faith. And then, of course, Cool Hand Luke. Paul Newman, Luke, our hero, Mr. Justice, a prisoner at a work camp, runs out into the rain and says to God, who I wasn't sure then whether I believed it or not, he says, "Love me, hate me, kill me, just let me know you're there." While his fellow prisoners yell, "Luke, Luke, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared of God?" And at that moment, of course, he isn't. But later in the movie, he does that himself. When everyone tries to pull the needle on his compass south, he doubts himself and says, confused, "I admit I ain't got no call to ask for much. But even so, you ain't dealt me no cards in a long time. It's beginning to look like you got it fixed so I can't never win out. You made me like I am. Now just where am I supposed to fit in? Old man, I gotta tell you, I started out pretty strong and fast, but it's beginning to get to me. When does it end? What do I do now?" But despite all this doubt, he still keeps walking north, following his unwavering compass out to his almost certain death, and mocks the evil boss man with the last, "Well, what we got here is a failure to communicate." And I remember specifically that when I saw Cool Hand Luke, I was wearing moose pajama pants, and I was eating a granola bar, and I remember feeling so dumb and shameless again. Here was Cool Hand Luke Jackson and Paul Newman and John Wayne and the Ringo Kid and Jefferson Smith, people with so much personal clarity, knowing exactly what to do, knowing what really was right, even when everyone around them said it was wrong. Being driven or led by some kind of inner, and my dad came up with the word I was looking for, code. They were driven by an inner code and spoke with this personal clarity and formidability. I was wearing loose pajama pants and on the path to becoming a nuclear waste handler. This was a wake-up call. A Salinger, "Are you listening, buddy? Buddy, don't you know that terrible secret yet? This is the biggest deal" kind of moment. This seems so important. Isn't it at the bottom of everything? Knowledge of self, strength of voice, solidity of code. Without this, I felt that every choice I would make in my life would come from left field and be that much more difficult. Every decision would be kind of random and decided largely by my fears or whims, right when I had to make it. Even though I'd still make mistakes and bad decisions, I felt that if I worked at a code, if I worked to make myself into someone with that personal clarity, that I'd be able to count on myself to make more consistently right decisions in the future. I mean, if I know about Luke and Mr. Smith and Rick Danko's arm going like this when he plays the bass in the last waltz, then, when those guys are right behind me, I think it'll be easier to keep my compass pointing north and harder to make decisions that would compromise myself. Which, as a Woody Allen level neurotic and social calculus flunk out, seems especially attractive. I mean, if you could drag me, whimpering in terror, out of the most secluded corner of the library to take an AP social calculus test, I'd spend the entire 4 hours working on one question. Number one, Abby has to borrow a pencil. In what tone do you reply? "Oh, I know this one. Take the integral of past encounters, add the cosine of the number of people around, rotate the resultant function around the is this boring and does this even make sense axis, and don't forget to add the mini reference quotient." And by that time, I'd already made a twitching puddle, a broken blood vessel or something. And I know this is totally worthless, but I can't stop doing it. So the code thing seems like an antidote to making these scared decisions based on vain reputation worries or shallow social fears. So I kept gathering things. Codes, etc., from everywhere, from history, from American history. American history is chock full. Presidents, Civil War generals. I mean, the Civil War is our country's search for identity and its attempt to stay true to its original code, all men are created equal. Also, bonus hint, truth, honor, and duty, and code are all brother words. Also, music, stand-up comedy, literature, and philosophy. This year in our philosophy class, we talked about Kant and his ideas about human dignity and human ability outside the puppet power of a God, being, or instinct to make decisions, to recognize a human code or higher right and wrong. And of course, I gathered code and voice from my dad. His voice takes up space in the world. He's got a code. Like when he's in the Navy, he was under the command of Petty Officer First Class Hezekiah Williams. Hezekiah was a bully and a tyrant who mistreated all the lower rank enlisted guys and who everyone hated. But once a year, Petty Officer Williams would invite everyone to his big backyard clam bake, and everybody who he had mistreated during the year, who he stepped on, would actually go, except my dad. Moved right there. So, okay, so where was I? By this time, I escaped my public school, and I was going to Laurel. I am going to Laurel, and there are new problems. You can't just do the gathering part. You can't just pick up perfect influences and then mainline them into a code that you follow right away. Sometimes the things you pick up will pick fights with each other. Like when I came here, I became much more aware of socioeconomic status, which caused some confusion. I mean, coming from an economically struggling family, I have to have hope and believe in the viability of the American dream and the value of the Constitution. I have to have some measure of faith in the system and in authority figures like Barack Obama and his ability to positively change the future of my family. But at the same time, because that same thing, this precarious financial situation, I know I'll have to fight my way higher, that there's a reason to question the way things are and the way things have been done. I thought these were two irreconcilable codes, the American Dream Code and the Dukes Up Gadfly Code. But after more thought and reevaluation, the lines blurred. Isn't the Declaration of Independence the first lyric sheet to the first rock song? Wasn't Jack Kerouac following the footsteps of Lewis and Clark? Didn't the Smothers Brothers lampoon LBJ because they believed so much in the United States and what we could be? Can't criticism of a country or a school come from a place of caring and help make the institution stronger? Couldn't both sides hold truth? Yeah, I figured both sides are fighting under the same code, for the same kind of truth. Identity crisis averted, right? And no, because even when you do sort out a more defined self, when you do figure out the identity and shape of your code, the sound of your yo, sometimes you're still afraid or don't know how to use it. And then, even when you do start to use your voice, leave a couple clam bakes, etc., some people will tell you that you're wrong, really wrong. And sometimes they'll even be really insulting about it. And you'll have moments like Luke when he says, I started out pretty strong and fast, but it's beginning to get to me. You'll have to decide whether or not to walk out and mock the boss man or reevaluate your code. Sometimes you'll be right, sometimes you'll be wrong. I've definitely been both. That's okay because this is a lifelong endeavor and this is the hardest thing, but it's also the most valuable. The work you do to get to your own code, free of irony or cynicism, is so important. Like Salinger says, buddy, don't you know that goddamn secret yet? It's not just important for me, it's at the bottom of everything. If you're in a clam bake right now, in some group that doesn't value you under the heel of a petty officer Hezekiah Williams, this can help you leave. If you feel like you're wearing loose pajama pants, this can help you switch them out for cowboy boots. When I need to admit that I'm wrong, when there's a Nurse Ratchet that needs to be taken down, when there's a saloon door that needs to be held open for a prostitute, this code thing is what I think will help me do it, or at least give it the best damn try I'm able. I'd like to leave you with 2.5 words, first brought to my attention, again, by my dad, vital to my own code, 2.5 words that will hopefully start you out or help you continue on your own code search. Maybe you've even heard them before. Yamel.